The transport's hum was the only sound that didn't hurt. Cold metal rattled under his boots as Captain Elias Corr pressed his back to the seat and stared through the viewport at the slow crawl of stars. They looked peaceful out there, too peaceful for what they'd seen. His right hand trembled slightly, bandaged but still slick beneath the gauze. Every time the ship lurched, his pulse jumped as if the battlefield had followed him aboard. He told himself this trip was freedom, the end of duty, the clean break he'd earned. But the look of every dead comrade still clung to his eyes, ghosts carried by starlight, refusing to scatter. The cabin smelled of oil and ozone, the air too recycled, the lights too bright. A row of mercenaries slept across from him, each one breathing like engines winding down. Their armor was mismatched and scuffed, the kind of soldiers who didn't care what side paid them as long as it paid enough. Elias wasn't like them. He had once believed in banners, in planets worth saving. He'd buried that belief under medals he never wore. His discharge papers said voluntary exile, though no one in command had used those words aloud. He hadn't cared. A one-way ship to the frontier sounded perfect. A place no one knew his name meant no one could say hero or murderer. The console flickered. A voice murmured through the intercom, female, gravel-thick with accent, saying, "Docking rings hold unstable pressure. Straps recommended." The other passengers barely moved. Elias fastened his harness anyway. He'd learned long ago that warnings were written in blood. The vibration grew stronger, rumbling up his spine. He closed his eyes and let the rhythm drown the memories of screams and plasma fire. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown he didn't want to end. The ship tilted, and he gripped the seat as gravity shifted sideways. Then, abruptly, the weight eased, and silence returned, heavy, waiting. A hiss behind him cut through that silence. Leather brushed metal. Elias froze. Someone had opened the rear hatch without clearance. He turned slowly. There, between the flickering cabin lights, stood a tall figure, her skin a deep cobalt laced with pale scars that crossed her cheek and neck like lightning. She wore a long coat patched with armor plates and a wide, battered hat that shadowed her glowing eyes. Not white, not silver, luminescent, alive. She looked half wild, half wounded, like something forged in the aftermath of war. Her hand rested on the back of his seat, claws faintly tapping metal. "You," she said, voice low and sibilant. "You are far from the right direction." Elias blinked hard, unsure if his exhaustion had birthed a hallucination. "What?" The word slipped out brittle. The alien leaned closer until he could see faint marks burned into her skin, old circuitry scars from some implant long removed. "This vessel," she whispered, "flies toward the wrong stars. You do not belong here." Her accent rolled the consonants like they tasted wrong in her mouth. Elias frowned, trying to find logic. "You one of the crew?" he asked. She tilted her head slowly, studying him with an expression that might have been amusement or pity. "Crew," she repeated. "No. I hunt paths." He didn't know what that meant, and he didn't want to ask. "Then what do you want from me?" The question sounded tired even to him. She moved around the seat, boots silent, the metal sighing under her weight. The others still slept, or pretended to. Her hand brushed the air near his shoulder, claws stopping an inch from contact. "Your scent," she said. "It smells of endings. Broken oaths. A trail cut short." Elias's stomach knotted. "You've got the wrong man." She smiled faintly, showing teeth too sharp to be human. "There is no wrong man. Only wrong direction." He almost laughed then, a dry noise scraping his throat. "Lady, every direction from where I came is the right one." Her expression softened, barely. "That's what they all think," she murmured. "Before the turning." The phrase meant nothing to him, but her tone made it feel heavy. She looked toward the viewport, her reflection hovering ghost-like beside the stars. "This route leads to Juno's grave," she said. "You will not like what waits there." Elias leaned forward, curiosity slicing through fatigue. "You seem pretty sure for someone sneaking aboard." The huntress met his eyes. "Because I have been there." Then, without warning, she turned and walked down the aisle, her coat brushing his arm like smoke. He wanted to call after her, to ask what she meant, but something in her posture told him silence was safer. When the ship docked hours later at an orbital refuel ring, The alien woman vanished among the crowd before he could find her again. He told himself to forget her words, wrong direction, like they were just the ramblings of some drifter. Yet they clung to his mind as he stepped off the shuttle and into the terminal's stale light. The port smelled of burnt coolant and cheap spice. Traders shouted over cargo crates, drones hummed like insects, and beneath it all, the deep throb of engines echoed through the deck plates. Elias walked with the flow, clutching the pack that held what little of his life remained. The idea was simple: reach the frontier, sign no contracts, disappear. The idea had kept him sane through years of nightmares. Until now. He stopped at a holomap kiosk. The blue display painted his face in light. A line traced from the Sol rim outward to a system marked Juno's grave, Outpost 9. Population, fluctuating. Atmosphere, marginal. Trade, restricted. Perfect, he thought. A place where questions died faster than their askers. He tapped for a transport ticket and waited. Behind him, the crowd's noise dimmed for a heartbeat, replaced by the distinct rhythm of boots that didn't match human cadence. Elias turned, half expecting her again. Nothing. Just shadows, shifting with the flicker of lights. He exhaled, shook off the chill creeping up his back, and boarded the connecting vessel. The second ship was smaller, older, a freighter turned passenger hauler. Rust rimmed the bulkheads. Seats patched with tape. The air recycler coughed every few minutes like an old smoker. Elias found an empty row near the rear and sank down, resting his head against the cool window. Stars streaked by as the vessel accelerated into jump alignment. He closed his eyes. Sleep dragged him down fast, into flashes of flame and static, the roar of orbital bombardment, the moment when he'd pulled his commanding officer from wreckage only to feel the man die in his arms. The guilt had never cooled. That's why he'd run, to somewhere the dead couldn't find him. A voice sliced through the dream. Still heading the wrong way. His eyes snapped open. She sat across from him again, the huntress, legs crossed, hat shadowing her face. No one else reacted. Maybe no one could see her. How, he began, but she raised a finger. You dream loud, she said. War songs echo even here. He rubbed his eyes. You're in my head. No, she replied. You are in mine. Her gaze flicked toward the window where streaks of light blurred into tunnels of color. This ship cuts paths through places not meant for hearts still bleeding. Elias clenched his fists. Stop talking in riddles. If you know something, say it plain. Her lips curved into a half smile. Plain? Very well. You are not running from ghosts. You are bringing them. He felt cold then, like her words had stripped oxygen from the air. You don't know me. Names change nothing, she said. I have seen your kind before. Flesh that refuses to rest. You think distance heals, but distance only stretches the wound. He wanted to stand, to walk away, but found he couldn't. The weight of her stare pinned him. What are you? He asked quietly. Hunter, guide, mistake, she said softly. All true once. None now. She leaned forward, lowering her voice to a whisper. When this vessel jumps, you will feel them. The ones you left burning. They will come to remind you of what direction really means. The intercom crackled. Jump in 5 minutes, the pilot announced. Elias tore his gaze away, heart hammering. When he looked back, the seat across from him was empty. He rubbed his temples, muttering curses under his breath. Just exhaustion. Stress. Nothing else. But when the jump initiated and the stars outside twisted into spirals, he heard it, whispers threaded through the engine's roar, voices calling his rank, his name, his failures. His chest tightened until it hurt to breathe. He slammed his hand against the window. Outside, the colors swirled like liquid flame. In one instant, he saw faces in the light, his squad, their eyes hollow, mouths moving soundlessly. Then blackness swallowed everything. He woke to alarms. The cabin tilted, loose equipment floating midair. The ship's gravity field had failed. Sparks cascaded from the ceiling. Passengers screamed as restraints snapped free. Elias grabbed the seat rail, pulling himself upright. Smoke filled his throat. Through the haze, he saw a silhouette standing perfectly still at the corridor's end, the huntress again, coat billowing though there was no wind. Wrong direction, she said calmly. You brought the storm. He tried to reach her, pushing through zero-gravity chaos, but every step felt slower, heavier. Help me, he shouted. Her glowing eyes narrowed. Help yourself, soldier. Choose another way. The hull shrieked as pressure ruptured. A blast door slammed shut between them. He fell backward, slamming into a console. Pain flared across his ribs. Warning lights flared crimson, navigation collapse. Drift trajectory engaged. The ship was lost in uncharted space. He crawled toward the emergency beacon, fingers shaking. Come on, he muttered, punching the activation key. Nothing. Dead circuits. He closed his eyes, tried to focus on breathing. The huntress's voice echoed faintly through the intercom, distorted but clear. If you wish to survive, follow the pull, not the path. When the smoke cleared hours later, Elias found himself drifting in a dead ship lit only by the cold gleam of nearby starlight. The system readouts were gibberish. He floated toward the viewport. Outside, a planet glowed faint blue beneath swirls of storm. Not on any chart he knew. He should have felt fear, but instead there was a strange calm, as if fate had dropped him somewhere meant. Wrong direction, he whispered to himself. Maybe she'd been right all along. He reached for the manual controls and angled what thrusters remained toward the planet below. The wreck groaned but obeyed. Fire streaked along the hull as atmosphere took hold. Through it all, he kept one thought steady. Maybe this was where forgetting finally stopped. Elias didn't remember the impact, only the sensation of waking up buried under silence. His body ached in places he hadn't known could hurt. Gravity pressed him against tilted metal. The ship lay half-sunken in mud, smoke leaking from the seams like the vessel itself was sighing. The cabin lights had died, leaving a dim blue glow seeping through cracked panels. He pushed himself upright and felt the bruise of the crash in every bone. Around him, empty seats twisted, their harnesses cut clean, as if someone had released the other passengers before impact. The air smelled faintly sweet, like ozone mixed with rain. Outside, through the shattered viewport, he saw a horizon of silver mist and shapes moving in it, tall and slow. He grabbed his survival pack, checked the emergency pistol, and climbed out through a broken hatch. The mud gave under his boots, warm and soft like living clay. The landscape stretched endlessly, a valley carved by old rivers now filled with fog that glowed faintly from the light of twin moons. In the distance, cliffs rose like the bones of ancient creatures. Every sound was swallowed quickly, as if the world preferred quiet. He turned once, looking at the wreck, and whispered, "Still alive." Saying it aloud felt like proof. Then, from the fog, a shadow moved, too upright to be animal. He froze, heart racing. The figure stepped closer, and pale eyes caught the moonlight. She had found him again. The huntress walked barefoot across the mud, her coat trailing behind her like a tattered banner. Her scars glimmered faintly beneath the mist. "You survived," she said simply. Elias laughed once, sharp and dry. "Seems that way." "Good," she murmured. "The planet does not like the dead." He studied her warily. "You brought the crash." "No," she said. "You did. I only pointed." She crouched beside a fallen beam and touched its edge, as though reading the metal's memory. The ship was bound for Juno's grave. "This is not it. You tore free when the jump failed." "Then where the hell are we?" he asked. She looked up at the twin moons, eyes reflecting their light. A world between roots. Not charted. Not wanted. He frowned. "You sound like you know this place." The alien's expression flickered with something like pain. "I hunted here once," she said quietly. "Long ago. The ground still remembers." She turned toward the fog. "We must move. The air shifts when the storms wake." Elias hesitated. "Why are you helping me?" Her lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. "Because I told you wrong direction. And still, you came. That makes you my fault." He followed her, the mud sucking at his boots, the fog thickening until he could barely see her outline. She moved like someone who knew every rise and hollow by instinct. When he stumbled, her hand caught his arm, steadying him. Her touch was cold but grounding, real in a way nothing else felt. They reached higher ground, a ridge covered in dark moss that pulsed faintly with bioluminescence. From there, the view widened. Broken spires jutted from the valley like the remains of crashed ships or colossal machines half devoured by time. Elias exhaled, or cutting through fatigue. "What happened here?" he asked. "War," she said. "Long before your kind found stars. Two clans built weapons that bent reality. The last battle shattered the pathways between worlds. What remains is a wound that never healed." Her voice carried no bitterness, only memory. "You fought in it." She turned her gaze toward the ruins, jaw tightening. "I ended it. For a while." They sheltered under the ribs of a toppled structure as rain began, slow, heavy drops that glowed where they fell. Elias lit a small flare, its orange light fighting the blue of the storm. The huntress crouched nearby, eyes watching the flicker. "You run from war," she said. "Yet it still finds you." He shrugged, pulling his jacket tighter. "Guess I'm good at bringing bad luck." "No," she said softly. "You carry unfinished promise. That draws echoes." He didn't understand, but her tone made him want to. "What's your name?" he asked. "Names are for those who expect to be called again," she said. "But once, they said Lyra." He nodded slowly. "Elias," he offered. "Once," she repeated, as though tasting the word. "That means you have buried parts too." Lightning split the fog, revealing strange silhouettes moving along the plain, tall, jointed, metallic. Elias tensed, hand on his pistol. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Collectors," she said. "They feed on wrecks. And memory." "Memory," he echoed. "They drain what survivors recall, store it as data. To them, every death is archive." She stood, hat tilting back. "Stay low." He did, crouching as the machines drew near, their bodies reflecting both moons. Each step they took left circular patterns in the mud, glowing briefly before fading. One stopped near the wreck of his ship, scanning the debris. The hum of its sensors vibrated through his chest. Lyra raised a hand and whispered something, an old word, guttural and harsh. The glow around them dimmed, as if the world held its breath. The machines turned away, walking back into mist. When silence returned, Elias exhaled. "You just hid us." She nodded. "Old tricks. Cost me much to learn." He studied her face, noting how the faint light bled from her scars now. "You're hurt." "Always," she said, but her voice wavered. He tore a strip from his sleeve and offered it. "Let me." "Don't," she said sharply. "The marks keep me here. If they heal, I vanish." That left him quiet. The rain eased to mist. He sat beside her, both staring at the ruins below. "Why tell me to turn back?" he asked finally. "Because your road ends where mine began," she said. "The dead you flee, they built the same wound I did. And if you keep running, you will open it wider." Her words echoed longer than thunder. He wanted to argue, to claim she was wrong, but the truth pressed too heavy. "I just wanted to forget," he whispered. "Then remember differently," she replied. "That is harder, but it saves more." She looked toward the horizon where faint lights pulsed, a city or something pretending to be one. "There," she said. "The relic core. It might still hold a way off this world." He stood, shouldering his pack. "And the catch? You will see what you tried to lose." He met her gaze. "Then lead on." For the first time, she smiled fully. "Human stubbornness," she said. "It breaks and builds everything." They descended into the valley, crossing fields where strange plants grew like glass coral, each stem humming when touched. The air thickened with static. Occasionally, Lyra stopped to draw symbols in the mud, marks that flickered before dissolving. "Wards," she explained. "To confuse the watchers." He didn't ask who they were. The path narrowed between cliffs streaked with veins of silver mineral. In the distance, a low droning began, rhythmic and deep. Elias realized it wasn't mechanical, it was voices, hundreds, chanting in unison. "What is that?" he whispered. "Remnants," she said. "Echoes that never learned silence." As they approached, the sound became words in a language he couldn't understand but felt under his skin. His pulse matched its rhythm, his vision blurring. Lyra grabbed his wrist. "Don't listen," she hissed. "They sing memory into you." He forced his focus on her face until the world steadied. "Why bring me through this?" "Because the straight path dies first," she said. "This one bends, but lives." They pushed through the narrowing canyon until it opened suddenly into a hollow. At its center rose a black spire, smooth and wet-looking, surrounded by broken drones. The structure pulsed faintly. Elias felt a tug in his chest, as if something inside the spire recognized him. "That's it?" he asked. Lyra nodded. The core of what was fought for. Power to cross any void. She stepped closer, her scars glowing again. "But it needs memory to wake. That is why you are here." He stared at her. "You brought me because of my past." "Because you refused to bury it," she corrected. "The machine hungers for truth unburied." He shook his head. "You think my pain can power that thing?" "Not power," she said softly. "Guide." He hesitated, then placed his palm against the spire. Instantly, heat surged through him, images flashing too fast to grasp. His unit on fire. His commander's final breath. The civilians they failed to save. He tried to pull back, but Lyra pressed her hand over his. "Breathe," she said. "Let it move through." The memories became light, flowing from him into the structure. The spire brightened, lines of gold running upward like veins. The chanting outside stopped. When the light faded, Elias staggered, gasping. The spire's surface split, revealing a circular doorway leading down into darkness. Lyra steadied him. "It opens," she said. "Because you still feel." He looked at her, eyes wet. "That's all I've been trying not to do." "Then perhaps this is your right direction," she said quietly. They entered the passage. Inside, walls shimmered like liquid glass. Strange constellations moved across them, shifting as if aware of their presence. The tunnel sloped downward until it opened into a vast chamber filled with machinery half submerged in glowing fluid. In its center hovered a sphere of pure light, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Lyra approached it with reverence. "This is what remains of the gate," she said. "It once carried fleets between galaxies. Now it sleeps." Elias stepped beside her. "And it can send us home." She looked at him, expression unreadable. "It can send you." My home burned with its making. He realized then she had never intended to leave. "You're staying. Someone must close what opens." He shook his head. "I'm not leaving you here." "You have no choice," she said, but her voice softened. "Humans always try to save what already saves them." She touched the sphere, and light flared around her, wrapping both in warmth that felt like sunlight remembered. "The path ahead is not where you were running," she said. "It's where you finally stop." The light grew brighter until he couldn't see her anymore. Her voice lingered, barely above a whisper. "Find meaning in the scars, not escape from them." Then silence. When Elias blinked against the fading glow, he stood alone before the sphere now pulsing faster. The machines around the chamber stirred, energy crackling through ancient conduits. The ground trembled. The light reached toward him like a tide. He took one step forward, then another, and whispered, maybe this time, the right direction. The world folded inward, and the last thing he felt was the weight of her hand still steadying his. Light consumed him, but it wasn't the kind that burned. It felt alive, like a pulse finding another heartbeat. Elias couldn't tell if he was falling or floating. The sense of direction dissolved completely. The glow pressed through his skin, threading into his veins, filling him with warmth that wasn't his. Then came the sound, soft at first, like wind through reeds, then building into voices whispering in languages older than thought. When it ended, gravity returned in a slow, steady pull. He landed hard on his knees, hands sinking into cold dust. The brightness faded, revealing a night sky unfamiliar and infinite, full of stars that pulsed in different colors. He was standing on solid ground, surrounded by ruins that looked both ancient and freshly wounded. The air smelled of smoke and rain, the kind that carried memory in it. Elias rose slowly, body aching, breath frosting in the chill. Around him, stone towers leaned like dying trees, their surfaces carved with glowing runes that flickered as if struggling to stay alive. He touched one, warm, almost breathing, and felt a faint echo of Lyra's voice in his mind, "Do not run from what answers you." He turned sharply, scanning the horizon, hoping for her silhouette. Nothing. Just the whisper of wind through hollow corridors. A realization settled heavy. She was gone, left behind in that dying world. Yet somehow, her presence clung to him, folded into his pulse, as though the gate had carried a piece of her with him. He walked. The terrain sloped gently downward toward what looked like a river of light, glowing faintly beneath a translucent surface. His boots left faint prints that shimmered before fading, the ground responding to each step. He couldn't tell if it was biological or artificial. The sky above rippled occasionally, as if reality itself shifted in slow tides. He knelt by the luminous river and touched it, warm and fluid. For a moment, he saw reflections not of himself, but of faces from his past, his squad, their expressions changing from defiance to sorrow. "Not again," he whispered, pulling his hand back sharply. The reflection rippled into nothing. The world felt alive and aware, watching him think. As he moved along the river's edge, a hum built in the distance, steady, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of something massive. He followed it until the ruins opened into a wide plain. At its center stood a structure shaped like an inverted pyramid, half buried in dust. Metallic roots spread from its base, pulsing with blue light that crawled toward the sky. Elias felt his breath catch. The architecture wasn't alien in the same way Lyra's ruins were. It felt older, deeper, as if built before war had language. He approached cautiously, the hum deepening until it matched his own pulse. At the pyramid's entrance, a faint shimmer appeared, a holographic field, quivering like liquid glass. When he stepped closer, it parted silently, allowing him through. Inside, the air was colder. Rows of what looked like suspended shapes hung in stasis pods, humanoid but not human. Their features were angular, their skin shades of blue-gray and silver. Each one had a small metal plate affixed to their chest with symbols he couldn't read. One pod near the center flickered dimly, its occupant stirring. Elias moved closer, heart thudding. The being inside opened its eyes, pale white, glowing faintly. Its voice came through the glass, calm and clear. "Traveler," it said. "You carry a memory not yours." Elias stepped back. "Who are you?" The creature blinked slowly. "Echo of the Makers. Guardian of what remains." It studied him with unblinking curiosity. "You came through the core unanchored. How did you survive?" He swallowed hard. "I didn't do it alone." The being's gaze softened slightly. "The Huntress. She guided you." Elias nodded. "She said this place could send me home." "Home," it repeated, the word strange on its tongue. "There is no home in what was. Only in what endures." The pod hissed open, releasing a breath of cold mist. The Guardian stepped out, its movements deliberate, as though testing the air for the first time in centuries. The gate she touched was dying. Its energy needed a focus, someone bound by guilt strong enough to hold it. "So she used me," Elias said bitterly. "No," the Guardian replied. "She freed you through it. The gate read what you carried and rewrote where you belong." Elias clenched his fists. "I didn't ask to be rewritten." The Guardian tilted its head. "No one ever does. But what you are now matters." It motioned toward the far wall, where faint images appeared, visions of galaxies collapsing into each other, of fleets burning across nebulae. War tears holes that never close. Your species is young, but its echoes reach far. The hunters once believed humans were the final spark before darkness. She believed it still. Elias stared at the images. "Then why tell me I was going the wrong way?" "Because you were," the Guardian said. "You fled from what should have been faced. Now you must decide what to build in the ashes." Before he could respond, the structure trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling as a low roar echoed outside. The Guardian turned sharply. "They found you." "Who?" Elias demanded. "Collectors," it said grimly. "The ones that feed on memory. They followed the gate's trace." It gestured toward a stairway leading deeper underground. "Go. The relic below can end them, but it must choose you. Elias hesitated. And you? The Guardian's pale eyes brightened. I will hold the entrance. Hurry. He ran, boots clanging against the metal stairs as the sound of distortion weapons filled the air above. He didn't look back, though he could feel the vibrations of combat shaking the walls behind him. The lower chamber was vast and circular, its floor covered in concentric rings of symbols that glowed faintly beneath his steps. In the center stood a pedestal with a sphere identical to the one in Lyra's world, but this one pulsed with red instead of gold. Elias approached cautiously, every instinct screaming to turn back. You again, he muttered to the universe. Always circles. He placed his hand on the sphere. A surge of heat raced through him, sharper than before. Voices screamed, not words, but raw feeling, rage, despair, loss. The memories weren't his. They belonged to billions. The machine was feeding him the record of the war that had scarred this place. He tried to pull away, but light coiled around his arm, holding him fast. Then he heard Lyra's voice, clear, cutting through the chaos. Elias. Remember what we are, not what we lost. The heat shifted, cooling into rhythm. The light around his arm turned gold again. The red in the sphere began to fade, replaced by a warm glow that spread outward through the floor rings. The symbols flared alive one by one, forming a vast pattern that rippled through the structure. Outside, the roar of combat ceased. Elias collapsed to his knees, gasping, as the sphere slowly dimmed. The floor under him felt warm, alive. He sensed the memories, billions of them, settling into peace. For the first time in years, the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt earned. The Guardian's voice came faintly through the chamber's comm line. You did it. The collectors are gone. Elias looked up weakly. I didn't mean to. Meaning rarely precedes purpose, it replied. The energy you released is stabilizing the rift. This world can heal now. He stood unsteadily. Then send me back. There is no back, the Guardian said softly. The Huntress knew this. The gate leads forward only. To where? To where you make it. The line went silent. The chamber lights dimmed until only the sphere glowed faintly, as if waiting. He stared at it for a long moment, then smiled tiredly. Guess we're doing this my way, then. He placed both hands on the sphere. The chamber filled with light again, but this time it didn't burn. The warmth spread outward, weaving across the ruins above, mending fractures, turning dust into green shoots. The glow rose into the sky, cutting through the endless dark clouds. For a heartbeat, Elias saw Lyra's silhouette in that light, smiling, hat in hand, scars faintly shining. Told you, her voice echoed faintly. Wrong way only until you turn. Then she was gone. When the light faded completely, Elias found himself standing on a transformed plain. The ruins stood whole again, towers gleaming like glass, the air alive with the scent of new rain. Above, the stars burned brighter, clearer, as though the universe itself had exhaled. He looked down at his reflection in the still river of light. His face was different, older, yes, but there was something else. The faintest trace of blue shimmered under his skin, like the echo of her mark. He touched his cheek, half laughing. Guess we both left scars. The wind carried the sound of movement behind him. He turned to see figures emerging from the light, humanoid, human even, but with faint luminous lines tracing their veins. They looked at him not with fear or but recognition. One stepped forward, a young woman with eyes the same color as Lyra's. You opened the bridge, she said. We saw it from the other side. Elias blinked. Other side of what? Of everything, she said simply. We've been waiting. He stared at them, realization dawning. The energy he had released didn't just heal this world, it connected others. The bridge Lyra spoke of wasn't just a path, it was a beginning. Then let's not waste it, he said quietly. The group nodded. Together, they moved toward the horizon where the sky shimmered with new constellations. The ground beneath them pulsed gently with light, guiding their way. For the first time in years, Elias didn't feel like he was fleeing. He was walking toward something that might finally matter. He didn't know what waited beyond the horizon, but he knew one thing for certain, he was finally going the right way. The dawn on this world rose without a sun. Instead, the sky simply brightened, as though the air itself decided it was time for light. The plains shimmered silver and blue, the luminous river winding like a living vein through the reborn valley. Elias walked at the head of the small group that had gathered, beings born from the fusion of two histories, human and something older, luminous with the touch of the gate. They spoke little, their movements patient and deliberate. Each step seemed to echo softly through the ground, a rhythm that felt purposeful. Elias carried nothing now but his jacket, torn and scorched, though he wore it like armor against uncertainty. The air smelled clean, impossibly so, as though even guilt had been washed away in the night. They reached the edge of a plateau overlooking what had once been ruins. Now it was a city reawakening. Towers glistened like crystal spires growing from the soil. Bridges arched between them, flowing with pale light instead of stone. The group stopped to watch in silence. "You made this," said the young woman with Lyra's eyes. "Not alone," Elias replied. "Nothing worth building ever is." Her expression softened. "Then help us finish it." He turned to face them. "You don't need a soldier for that. We need someone who knows how to stop running," she said quietly. The words struck deeper than he wanted to admit. He looked out over the city, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. "Then maybe it's time I learned what that feels like." They descended into the growing city. The structures responded to their presence, doors opening silently, pathways forming where none existed. It felt like walking through the memory of a civilization learning how to live again. Elias watched as his companions moved with intuitive understanding, their hands trailing over walls that responded with soft ripples of light. They called it the renewal, a name that felt both too small and too vast. He didn't know where they had come from, only that they were the echo of what the gate had restored, perhaps fragments of lost travelers, perhaps something entirely new. When he asked, they would only smile and say, "We are what remains when the storm forgets to rage." Days blurred together as they worked. They built with tools that responded to thought, shaping materials from the ground itself. Elias learned to guide energy flows, stabilizing sections of the new city. His hands, once used for destruction, now helped weave light into structure. It wasn't easy. The process drained him, each act of creation demanding emotional weight, the opposite of how he'd lived for years. The more he built, the more his past returned in flashes. Not as torment this time, but as reminders of what shaped him. Sometimes, when exhaustion crept in, he would look to the sky and imagine Lyra watching from some distance beyond stars, her voice still whispering, "Don't run. Remember differently." One night, while overseeing a stabilization field near the river, Elias noticed the horizon trembling faintly. The light there shifted red, rippling unnaturally. He frowned. "That's not supposed to happen." The young woman joined him, her expression tightening. "The bridge is fraying," she said. "The energy between worlds was never meant to stay open this long." "Then close it," he said automatically. She shook her head. "We can't. The balance depends on both sides. If we seal it from here, everything we've built will unravel." He stared at the pulsing red light. "So it's falling apart because of me?" "No," she said firmly. "Because of what was left behind." A chill ran through him. "Lyra." The woman nodded. "Her mark binds both realms. If she fades, so will this one." Elias felt his chest tighten. He thought he had accepted her loss, that her sacrifice had been final. But now the truth cut differently. She wasn't gone, just trapped in the wound between worlds, keeping both from collapsing. "There's a way to reach her?" he asked. "Maybe," the woman said. "But it means crossing back through the core you stabilized. No one's ever done that from this side." He looked toward the horizon again. The red light had grown stronger, pulsing like a warning. "Then it's time someone did." She touched his shoulder, eyes full of concern. "If you fail, this world dies with you." He gave a small, tired smile. "That's the problem with second chances, they don't come risk-free." The journey back to the core was longer than he remembered. The landscape had changed again, shaped by the living world's growth. Forests of glass-leafed trees whispered as they passed. Rivers hummed low harmonies. The path felt like walking through a dream he had once seen but forgotten. When they reached the ancient spire, Its entrance still glowed faintly with the same golden light that had saved him. Elias paused at the threshold. "If I don't come back," he said, "make sure this place keeps growing." The woman nodded. "And if you do come back, then maybe I'll finally stop being the man who only survives." He stepped through before she could answer, and the world folded inward. Inside, the chamber had changed. The once stable light now pulsed erratically, flickering between gold and crimson. The sphere hovered lower, its surface rippling as though restless. Elias approached cautiously. "Lyra," he said aloud. "If you're still there, I'm coming." The sphere vibrated sharply, emitting a hum that deepened into a voice, hers. "You shouldn't have come back." Relief and grief tangled in his chest. "I couldn't stay knowing you're still holding everything together." "I chose this," she said. "The wound needs a keeper." "Then let me take your place." "No," her voice snapped. "You are human, Elias. You heal by moving forward, not by standing in ruin." "And you?" he asked. "What do you heal by?" Silence stretched, then softer, remembering differently. He placed his hand against the sphere. The light surged, enveloping him in warmth and pain all at once. He saw her within it, Lyra standing in a void filled with fractured stars, her form flickering, scars glowing brighter than ever. "You're fading," he whispered. "Because you keep remembering me as gone," she said. "Memory shapes being here. Let me go in peace." "I can't," he said. "You saved me. You gave me something to live for again." She smiled sadly. "Then live. Don't chain me to what's over." The light around her flickered violently. The chamber shuddered. He felt the air tremble with the strain of collapsing energy. "Lyra," he shouted. "The bridge, if it breaks, it won't," she said. "Because you finally stopped running." A wave of force threw him backward. The sphere blazed pure white, its sound a low, endless note that vibrated through his bones. He hit the ground hard, shielding his eyes. When the light dimmed, she was gone. The chamber was silent again, the sphere calm and gold, steady as a heartbeat. He lay there for a long time, breathing slowly, waiting for grief to tear through him. But instead came quiet certainty. She wasn't gone, she had become part of the balance itself, woven into the pulse of every star that still burned. The red glow on the horizon outside faded back to blue. The bridge held. He stood shakily, dusting off his jacket. "You were right," he murmured. "Wrong direction's just another word for unfinished." When he stepped out of the spire, the world greeted him with light. The sky shimmered like water, the city in the distance blooming brighter. The young woman waited at the base of the hill. "It's done," she said, relief washing over her features. "She's free." "In her way," he said. "And the world." "Alive," she replied. "More than before." He looked at the horizon one last time. "Then maybe it's time I find out what forward really means." She smiled. "Stay," she said simply. "Build with us." He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah," he said softly. "Maybe I will." That night, as the new city pulsed with quiet life, Elias sat by the luminous river again. The stars above were clearer, and among them, he thought he saw one flicker a little brighter than the rest, a single scar of light in the endless dark. He raised his hand in a silent salute. "Safe travels, huntress," he whispered. The wind stirred gently, carrying a faint echo across the water. It wasn't words, not exactly, but it felt like laughter. For the first time since the war, he smiled without pain. The world had direction again, and so did he. Seasons passed without Elias noticing their count. The new world no longer measured time by sun or shadow but by rhythm, the breathing of rivers, the flowering of light, the quiet return of color after storms. The city had grown vast beneath the glass-blue sky, its towers alive with movement. Bridges shimmered as energy pulsed through their veins like blood through arteries. The people, the fusion-born, moved with calm purpose, their voices low and musical. Each carried faint traces of both the huntress's lineage and human resilience. Elias had become one of them without meaning to, his scars blending into the rhythm of creation. Yet deep down, the soldier in him still kept watch, listening for threats even in peace. He worked each day on the outer edge of the renewal, where the last fragments of the old ruins still stood. There he built barriers of living light to protect the growing settlements from the raw energy that sometimes leaked from the old gateways. His hands no longer shook when he shaped the glow. The act of building had become ritual, steady, purposeful, grounding. Sometimes the young woman who had guided him here came to help. Her name was Saren now, chosen by her own will, meaning the voice of the first dawn in their new language. "You still carry her shadow," she said once, while watching him repair a fractured wall. "Lyra?" he asked. "She's not a shadow," he said softly. "She's the light that keeps the cracks from spreading." That night, while others slept, he returned to the hill overlooking the valley. The air shimmered with warmth. Above, the scarred star that had once flickered in the void now burned steady, golden. He closed his eyes and listened to the world breathe. For the first time, he could feel her presence not as grief, but as guidance woven into every pulse of the living sky. "You told me wrong direction," he whispered, smiling faintly. "Guess I just had to walk far enough to see where it led." The wind brushed against him, soft as laughter, carrying faint motes of gold that faded against his jacket. When he opened his eyes, he saw something new, another gate forming in the distance, though smaller, gentler, shaped like a spiral of light opening inward. At first, he thought it was another wound forming, a threat returning. But when he approached, he realized this one was different. It hummed in harmony with the world around it, not in defiance. Saren and the others gathered behind him, drawn by its glow. "What is it?" she asked. Elias watched the light twist and pulse. "A calling," he said slowly. "Not for war, not for escape, maybe for learning." The gate expanded slightly, revealing flickering images within, glimpses of other worlds, each faint but distinct. Oceans reflecting twin moons. Forests made of crystal canopies. Cities suspended over rivers of clouds. He felt awe rising in him, the same wonder he had lost long ago when all stars had meant battlefields. Saren touched his arm. "It's beautiful," she said. "It's dangerous," he replied instinctively, but his tone carried no fear, only understanding. "All beginnings are." She looked at him curiously. "Will you go through?" He hesitated, eyes tracing the spiral. "Someone has to see what's on the other side. We built this world from broken pieces, it deserves to meet others born the same way." "Then we'll go with you," she said firmly. He smiled. "No. You belong here. Keep the light steady. I'll find the next direction." She frowned but nodded, recognizing the quiet certainty in his tone. The crowd parted as he stepped closer to the shimmering gate. The hum deepened, wrapping around him like a heartbeat that wasn't his. He paused at the threshold. "If this is another wrong way," he murmured, "then maybe that's the point." He stepped forward, and the world bent. For a heartbeat, he floated in a void full of voices, some familiar, some impossibly distant. The gate didn't tear this time. It unfolded, revealing corridors of light connecting countless worlds. He saw fragments of other civilizations rebuilding, just as they had, some alien, some human, some something in between. Each pulse of energy carried echoes of Lyra's laughter, her voice scattered like wind across galaxies. He realized then what she had meant all along: there was no single right way. Only motion, choice, and the courage to make meaning out of it. When he emerged, gravity returned gently. The sky above was violet and streaked with golden clouds. Beneath his feet lay soil that shimmered faintly like powdered glass. In the distance stood a city unlike any he had seen, towers curved like waves, surrounded by trees whose leaves glowed silver at their edges. He took a slow breath, letting the air fill his lungs. It was cooler here, carrying the scent of rain and iron. A voice echoed behind him, calm and curious. "You came through the living bridge." He turned. The figure who approached was tall, slender, and radiant, not quite human, not quite alien, but familiar somehow. "We saw the light from your world," she said. "We thought it a myth." He smiled faintly. "It's real. We rebuilt it." "Then you carry the memory of the huntress," she said softly, as though the words were ancient ritual. His chest tightened. "You knew her." "All who walk between worlds know her name," she said. "She was the first to show that scars can hold universes together." Elias looked away, blinking against sudden emotion. She would have liked that. The woman extended her hand. Then come. There is much to share. The bridge between our worlds must hold. He took her hand, feeling the warmth of it anchor him again. It will, he said. This time, we build it right. Days turned to weeks again, and the rhythm of creation resumed, but different now. This new world joined with the renewal through currents of light, forming a network of shared life. Elias taught them what his people had learned, that rebuilding meant remembering, not repeating. The alien architects shared their craft of harmony, shaping matter through resonance rather than command. Together, they forged bridges that pulsed between realms, each one unique yet connected. When he rested, he sometimes felt Lyra's presence still, never as a ghost, but as music, woven into every pulse of the expanding network. Each time he touched new soil, he whispered her name, a quiet promise carried forward. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the world in amber glow, Elias stood on a cliff overlooking the joined cities. The hum of the bridges filled the air, steady and alive. Saren's voice came through the comlink, faint but clear. You found another one. Two, actually, he said, smiling. They're ready to connect. The light spreads fast. That's what light does. A pause. Do you ever think about going back? He looked at the horizon, where the stars were now countless. Back is just another kind of forward, he said quietly. And I'm still walking. She laughed softly. Then keep walking, soldier. Builder, he corrected. The soldier finally retired. Night deepened. The bridges shimmered brighter, threading through the stars like veins of gold across the cosmos. Elias sat on a stone ledge, tracing one with his eyes. For a moment, he thought he saw Lyra's reflection beside him, hat tilted, eyes glowing faintly, that same amused smirk. You never did listen, her voice whispered faintly. Not when it mattered, he whispered back. But I learned eventually. Her silhouette leaned against the wind. Then maybe there's hope for your kind after all. He smiled. There always was. You just had to look in the wrong direction to see it. The image faded into the starlight, leaving warmth where cold might have been. He sat there until dawn broke again, the color of promise. Years later, when songs were written about the first bridgemaker, they spoke of a man who walked endlessly through light, carrying scars that glowed like lanterns. They said he listened to the stars until they began to answer, and that in the echo of every new world, a faint laugh could still be heard, a huntress's laugh, threaded through eternity. But Elias himself never claimed legend. He only built, quietly and steadily, finding purpose in every beam and pulse. When others asked why he kept traveling, he'd smile and say, because somewhere out there, another wrong direction is waiting to be set right. And with that, he would step once more into the light. In the end, when his time came, the network he'd built shone across galaxies. The bridges pulsed in harmony, worlds connected not by conquest but by memory and choice. As he closed his eyes for the last time, the stars above shifted faintly, forming the shape of a scarred woman's smile across the horizon. The universe breathed with him once, then carried him onward. Not gone, not lost, simply part of the path now. In the quiet that followed, countless travelers looked up at that constellation and found courage to take their first step. They never knew his name, only his echo, a broken warrior who found the right direction by walking through every wrong one.